general trends of cases that come before the court. And being a young lawyer, that exposure was quite new for me. So like what kind of human rights cases are coming before the Supreme Court? What are the priorities of like the general public or for public interest litigation? And sadly, during my time in 1 year, which I was discussing with Altamash as well, that there was not a single case that I heard that was related to animal rights. And that just shows our priority at the Supreme Court level. And I'm not saying that it's just the Supreme Court, it's a collective issue, it's the issue of executive as well, it's an issue of judiciary, and it's an issue of legislature as well. Unless these three bodies consider animal rights as a priority, we will not be able to, like, the discussion is important, but obviously the implementation at a national level and local level is the responsibility of these institutions. So, but to appreciate some of the efforts that have already been done by the Supreme Court, and as the research lead of the organization, we are creating this new initiative where we are researching on all the animal rights related judgments that has been passed by the Supreme Court since 1947 and high courts as well. And like, for example, I was researching and I found only 7 to 8 judgments which even remotely related to animal rights. Like, could be 1 to 2 that were directly related to animal rights, but other than those, there were only like 5 to 6 that were remotely related to animal rights. So, I mean, I would also like to appreciate the fact that High Court compared to the Supreme Court was much more active when it comes to hearing and cases regarding the animal rights. So, to name some of the cases, the latest one was Amir Ishaq versus Province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And this case was basically about the operation of stone crushing plants in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the case was regarding that these stone crushing plants, their operation causes environmental hazard, which are then dangerous to the human health. And during that judgment, although the judgment's whole focus was on the human rights, the report which was used as an evidence or base for the judgment, that included long-term exposure to such high concentrations of PM10 can cause severe health effects ranging from coughing, asthma to high blood pressure, cardiac diseases among the residents as well as the staff of stone crushing plants. PM10 is also known to affect animals by causing various respiratory problems and creating additional stress. So one sees that not only human rights were being considered, but also the animal rights and the effects that it does to animals, those who are living in those areas, that nobody talks about. For example, when we talk about climate change, and when we talk about air pollution, and when we talk about smog, or when we talk about, like, for example, floods or any other natural disasters, the conversation is how to prevent those disasters and how to go back and minimize mitigation methods. And when we talk about the repair damage, we only talk about, okay, how humans can be saved. But nobody puts, like, for example, air pollution. When we talk about air pollution, nobody discusses the air pollution effects on animals. Have you ever considered about that, the effect it creates to animals? Because like हम तो घरों में एयर प्योरीफायर वगैरह अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं, हमारे जो एनिमल्स, जो बाहर स्ट्रे एनिमल्स हैं, उनको रेस्पिरेटरी इश्यूज जो होते हैं या उनको कोई कार्डियक जो डिजीजेस वगैरह होते हैं. So the idea why this is important in the whole conversation between human and environmental and animal rights, the idea why it is important is because environment, human and animals are dependent on each other. So like we can't, any suggestion or solution to our current problems of relating to our nature cannot be done without including other living species, whether they are nature, whether we are talking about trees or whether we are talking about animals. Because animals are also dependent on us, but we are not feeling the responsibility of it. Like, do we consider that animals are our responsibility? No, we don't. Although we take all the benefits, whether in the form of our food, whether in the form of wool, or whether in the form of clothes. So all, like, we are taking everything from them, but we are not contributing towards them. So that is, I think that is what needs to talk about. The second case was regarding the wildlife laws, and in this case, basically the idea was, how the case started was that hunting permission was granted to some foreign dignitaries So because of that, there was this case was filed that hunting, because the Hibra bustard, that bird is a protected animal, and according to the international law, its hunting is prohibited. So this should not be done. So the court went into analysis of all the provincial laws, all the provincial wildlife laws, and we saw that there were inconsistencies between the provincial laws as well. Like some law prescribes it, some law prohibits it, some law like selectively prescribes it. So I think that is another one of the things when we talk about legislation के aspects से जब हम बात कर रहे हैं, we also need to reconcile and we also need to make harmonious in हमारे जो provincial laws हैं उनकी भी harmoniously हमें करना चाहिए. And other cases which I would also like to talk about are related to, for example, and why I think it's important is because being a country जिसका constitution का हमारा जो premise है is based on Islam and on the principles of Islam. So principles of Islam के हिसाब से human beings are the custodians, we are the trustees. And we are the trustees to everything in the world which has been given to us. It's our responsibility to take care of it. So even from an Islamic perspective, we need to think about that this is a responsibility of humans. And because Pakistan is a primarily Muslim country, so उसमें ये है कि for example हम लोग discuss करते हैं हमारी ईद उल अज़हा होती है. अब ईद उल अज़हा में आई एम श्योर हम लोग देखते हैं जब भी हमारी फीडर मार्केट्स होती हैं या कैटल मार्केट्स होती हैं, उसमें जानवरों का क्या हाल होता है, किस तरीके से उन्हें इकट्ठे लेकर जाया जाता है, किस हालत में उन्हें रखा जाता है. एंड देयर वाज वन ऑफ द केसेस व्हिच आल्सो टॉक्ड अबाउट दैट वाज प्राइमरीली रिलेटेड टू द म्युनिसिपल लॉज एंड कॉर्पोरेशन एंड द रिस्पांसिबिलिटी ऑफ द म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन in ensuring that those markets are up to the standards and they follow the rules and regulations. But that is also another interesting aspect of it, that whenever, like for example, in festivals like Eid al-Azha, where or generally like slaughtering animals, we also need to put in place proper laws and proper SOPs on how this is to be done to ensure minimum damage to the animals and to the animals that we are slaughtering. So these are all some of the cases, primarily cases, and Justice Jawad will talk about the High Court cases as well. The Kawan judgment, which was the pioneering step towards the discussion on animal rights. So that was the Kawan judgment was the first judgment which basically discussed on, okay, animal rights is something which should be discussed in Pakistan, and animals are something that the constitution is responsible for, or animals is something that the judiciary is responsible for, or the government is responsible for. So when we talk about climate justice, now we are talking about climate justice, climate change. So climate justice में हम बात करते हैं, okay, so we are the vulnerable country, developing countries जो हैं उनका damage हम लोग contribute इतना ज़्यादा नहीं करते, and हमारा effect है वो हमें ज़्यादा feel होता है. तो उसमें भी हमें डिस्कस करना चाहिए कि climate change also includes, climate change का concept is that जो vulnerable population है उसकी तरफ impact जो है unequal जो distribution होती है. So when we talk about climate justice, I think based on my interpretation, climate justice also includes justice to animals as well. So when we are talking about climate, not just justice to, like for example, human beings or the effects of climate on human beings. It's about the effects of climate change on nature, on other living species. So that is something that, because climate justice is something that has already been recognized, and Justice Mansoor Ali Shah is a big advocate of climate justice. So maybe Supreme Court on forward, I think that whenever they are talking about climate justice, they can even in the slightest, for example, it could be 1 or 2 lines, they can start incorporating animals' perspective or animals' focus towards climate justice and environmental related cases as well. So regarding our initiative, that was basically the basic idea behind creating this anthology. So we are creating this whole report where we will compile all the Supreme Court cases of Pakistan and all the High Court cases of Pakistan. And then we will also incorporate all the academic articles that have been written by Pakistani authors or something about animal rights in Pakistan. So that this handbook would be useful not just to lawyers who are looking for public interest litigation, whether it's about the rights of animals, or it would be useful to the judges as well, that they can use this as a resource, and it can be used as a basic handbook that any person who is interested in animal rights or animal activism, they can use that handbook to basically use as a foundation and to formulate their arguments. And because for this project, we would also like the contribution of our law students, or the contribution of our lawyers, or the contribution in whatever capacity you can. We are more than happy to include you in this project, which I think it is a collective effort. It's not just the organization's effort. We would love to incorporate other people's work and other people's contributions to the report as well. So I think lastly, I would just like to say that, okay, I was hearing these all addresses by everyone, and everyone was talking about enforcement, कि enforcement का issue है, और वो जनरली एक मसला है कि हमारे legislation आ भी जाती है तो enforcement का मसला सिर्फ animal rights में नहीं है, enforcement का मसला हमारे हर rights में है, हमारे human rights में भी enforcement का मसला है. So rather than waiting for the legislation and rather than waiting for the enforcement, we have to think about what we can do in our current capacity. For example, if I am a lawyer, I am part of, I'm organizing this conference, I'm bringing in judges who can bring their perspective, or we are bringing social activists to have a constructive dialogue about this, because I've never seen anyone talking about animal rights in Pakistan before. This is the first of its kind, especially at such a big scale. So we have to think deep about what is our role in this crisis. So for example, if you are a student in university, when I was at LUMS, Alchemist was there as well. So we made this initiative of creating an animal welfare society, because we recognize the need that हम जिस campus में रहते हैं, वहाँ सिर्फ हम नहीं रहते, वहाँ बिल्लियाँ भी रहती हैं, वहाँ परिंदे भी रहते हैं, वहाँ और जो living organisms हैं वो भी रहते हैं. तो हमने ये चीज़ करके, और हमें फील होता था कि दीज और बेसिक आइडिया था, व्हेन यू थिंक अबाउट के अच्छा ये खाना कैसे खाते होंगे, सर्दी हो रही है तो ये सर्दी में रात को कैसे मतलब सोते होंगे, कोई जगह ढूंढते होंगे नहीं. तो एज स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ बेसिक, इफ यू आर इन स्कूल और इफ यू आर इन यूनिवर्सिटी, you should make your own animal welfare society, and you should think about, okay, हम लोग मिलके a group of 5 students or 10 students can basically take care of the animals around us. And the idea behind that is, if we keep waiting for the enforcement का भी मसला ये है कि enforcement आपकी उस चीज़ की होती है जिसकी प्रायोरिटी होती है, और प्रायोरिटी आपकी सोसाइटी उससे होता है. हमारी सोसाइटी में भी एनिमल्स इज़ नॉट अ प्रायोरिटी, एंड सोसाइटी में प्रायोरिटी बनाने के लिए हमें एजुकेशन और अवेयरनेस की ज़रूरत है. सो फॉर एजुकेशन एंड अवेयरनेस, इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट वी start these initiatives at personal level, and we start these initiatives in our own capacity, whether in organizations, whether in schools, or whether if you're a lawyer or activist or something like that. So that's all. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for your time.